Chapter 1. After 999 failed attempts to seduce her Buddha child husband and consummate their marriage, Casha Faulkner called her brother. "Lawrence, I'm going to file for divorce." There were 3 seconds of silence on the other end of the line before Lawrence Faulkner's deep voice came through. "I told you, Casha, you were never going to be the one to pull Ethan Sterling from his pedestal." Casha smiled, her eyes welling with tears. "Yes, I overestimated myself." "Come to Germany," Lawrence said, his tone light. "There are plenty of handsome men here, none of them worse than Ethan. He doesn't know how to cherish a wonderful sister like you. Let him spend the rest of his life alone with his Buddha statues." "Okay, as soon as I've sorted everything out," she said softly. After hanging up, Casha took a deep breath. As she passed the meditation room at the end of the hall, she heard a stifled grunt from within. The door was ajar, a sliver of light escaping from the crack. Her eyes, trembling, were drawn to the scene inside. Amidst the swirling incense smoke, Ethan Sterling knelt before a statue of the Buddha. His plain white robe was half open, Buddhist prayer beads wrapped around his wrist. His body, however, was moving in a subtle rhythm. Beneath him was a life-sized, realistic doll. The doll's face was clearly visible in the flickering candlelight almond eyes, cherry lips, and a single mole beneath the left eye. It was the spitting image of his adoptive sister, Rosalie Sterling. Casha bit her lip so hard she tasted blood. This was the 3rd time she had secretly witnessed this. The first time, she had fled the room. The second, she had lain awake all night. Tonight, she just felt numb. How ridiculous. It wasn't that he was devoid of passion. It was just that his desires had never been for her. Leaning against the cold wall, she suddenly recalled the first time she saw Ethan Sterling. She was 20. Her brother had taken her to a banquet at a private club to introduce her to his best friend. That day, Ethan wore a moon-white tunic suit with a lotus-shaped jade button at the collar. A string of prayer beads was wrapped around his wrist. Among all the decadent young heirs in the room, only he had a simple cup of clear tea before him. He lowered his gaze to pour the tea, his long, slender fingers holding the pot. As the steam rose, he looked up and met her eyes. In that moment, Casha's heart skipped several beats. Seeing her captivated look, Lawrence tapped her forehead with a smile. "Don't even think about it, little sis. You can fall for anyone but him. In our circle of heirs, we all indulge, but Ethan has been a devout Buddhist since he was a child. He's completely detached from worldly desires." She didn't believe it. She had been a handful her whole life and refused to believe anyone could be truly without desire. So, she began to pursue him, using every trick in the book to entice him. She'd deliberately sit on his lap while he was chanting sutras, only to be lifted off and placed aside with one hand. She put an aphrodisiac in his tea, but after drinking it, he only commented mildly, "Next time, don't put so many goji berries in. They give me heartburn." The most outrageous time, she snuck into his meditation room while he was in seclusion, wearing nothing but one of his white shirts and lying on his bed. When Ethan opened the door, she deliberately dangled her legs over the side of the bed. He simply turned around and left. The next day, he had a box of brand new shirts delivered to her. "These are for you. Stop stealing mine." Even Lawrence couldn't watch anymore. "Could you have a little self-respect?" Casha was defiant. "I'm performing a public service. It's a waste for a man that handsome to be a monk." She chased him for 4 years, using every ounce of her charm, but couldn't even get him to spare her a second glance. Casha was starting to lose hope when, late on her birthday, she got a call from Ethan. "Come downstairs." She ran down in her pajamas and saw him standing in the snow, his shoulders covered in flakes. "Let's get married," he said. "No ring, no proposal, just those 3 words. Casha was ecstatic. She threw herself into his arms. "You've finally been moved by me, haven't you?" Ethan didn't hug her back. He just gave a soft Thinking back now, that was so perfunctory. In their 2 years of marriage, they never consummated it. No matter how she tried to seduce him, he would always turn and leave at the last moment, retreating to his meditation room. She once thought he just needed time, having been a devout Buddhist for so long. It wasn't until 3 days ago, when she followed him into the meditation room, unable to give up, that she finally understood. He wasn't without desire, she just wasn't the object of it. He was in love with his sister, Rosalie Sterling, the girl his family had adopted. His Buddhism, his prayer beads, his marriage to her, it was all a way to suppress his desire for his adoptive sister. In that moment, her heart died completely. Inside the meditation room, Ethan finally stopped. "Rosie," he whispered, leaning down to kiss the doll's neck, his voice impossibly hoarse. "I love you," the whisper was faint, but it was like a rusty needle, piercing her already shattered heart with precision. Casha's tears finally fell. She turned and walked away, never looking back. The next morning, when Casha woke up, Ethan was already dressed and about to leave. He wore a tailored black suit that accentuated his tall, slender frame. The prayer beads were still wrapped around his wrist, as if the man who had lost control last night was just a figment of her imagination. Just as he was about to step out of the villa, Casha called out, "Wait, I have a meeting," he said without looking up, his voice like jade submerged in ice water. "Don't be clingy." The words were a blunt knife, slowly sawing through her last shred of hope, so in his eyes she would always be a persistent, troublesome pest. Casha suddenly laughed. "You misunderstand. I want the keys to the Maybach. You can take the other car from the garage. I'm more used to this one." Ethan finally looked at her properly, his tone still cool. "Are you going out for something?" She nodded. "Yes," he asked one more question. "What for?" Casha pulled the keys directly from his suit pocket, a smile playing on her lips. "To do something that will make you very happy. To leave you forever." Chapter 2, Casha didn't say the last part out loud. She just turned, got in the car, and drove to the embassy. The application process for German permanent residency wasn't complicated, especially for someone with her family's background. A few years ago, the Faulkner family had moved all their business overseas. Her parents and brother had all relocated abroad, leaving only her behind for Ethan's sake. Now, she was leaving too. The paperwork should take about a week, the staff member said with a smile. She nodded, took the receipt, and walked out of the embassy. It was finally over. Ethan Sterling, the man she had pursued for 6 whole years, the untouchable Buddha she thought she could bring down to earth, was never meant to be hers. She had given up so much for him, becoming a vegetarian, living a quiet life, and even smoothing down her once fiery personality. All just to get a little closer to him. In the end, she couldn't even touch the most hidden desires of his heart. She glanced down at the receipt in her hand and smiled faintly, a sour feeling welling up inside her. "Whatever, Ethan, if you don't want me, plenty of others do." That night, she met up with her girlfriends at a nightclub. Since marrying Ethan, she hadn't been to a place like this in a long time. Tonight, she wore a black slip dress, the hem swaying with her every step, revealing long, slender legs. Her eyes held a long-lost spark of defiance. "Casha, what's gotten into you today?" Her best friend, Chloe Summers, asked, grabbing her arm in surprise. "Ever since you fell for that cold fish, haven't you been revolving your entire life around him? You swore off places like this." Casha smiled, taking a sip of her drink, her eyes a little hazy. "Forget him. Tonight is all about having fun." She turned and walked onto the dance floor, moving to the rhythm, her body feeling liberated, free, and unrestrained. Her gaze swept over the male models, a smile playing on her lips. She reached out and lightly traced the abs of one, drawing a low laugh. "Casha, are you crazy?" Chloe chased after her, grabbing her hand. "You're touching all these models and dancing so close to them, aren't you afraid Ethan will get angry if he sees? He's not here." "No," Chloe hesitated, leaning close to her ear. "Who told you he's not here? I've been trying to tell you, Ethan is in the back booth. He's been watching you for a long time." Casha's fingertips froze. She slowly lifted her eyes. Through the hazy lights, she saw him immediately. Ethan, in a black suit, was a stark contrast to the surrounding chaos. He sat in a corner booth, his long fingers resting on the rim of his glass, his gaze dark and fixed on her. Who knew how long he had been watching? The music stopped at that exact moment. She heard one of Ethan's friends beside him jest, "Ethan, Casha's been out there dancing for ages, and she's touching other men. If that were my wife, I'd have flipped the damn table by now. How can you just sit here so calmly?" Ethan's expression didn't change. He simply took a sip of tea, his voice cool. "She knows her limits. She won't do anything out of line." The words were like a poisoned needle, striking the softest part of her heart. Knows her limits? Was he so sure she loved him too much to do anything with another man, or did he simply not care? Perhaps it was both. "Tusk, your level of detachment is something else. I wonder if there's anything in this world that can actually stir your emotions. The friend's voice suddenly rose. Hey, Ethan, where are you going? Casha looked up instinctively and saw Ethan stand up abruptly, his eyes locked on the other side of the dance floor. A rare glint of jealousy flickered in his usually indifferent eyes. She followed his gaze, and there, as expected, was Rosalie Sterling. Dressed in a white dress, she stood at the edge of the dance floor, exchanging phone numbers with a man. Ethan strode over, grabbing Rosalie's wrist, his voice chillingly cold. Who let you come to a place like this? And who gave you permission to give your number to someone else? Rosalie was stunned, then her eyes reddened. Why can't I be here? And why can't I give my number to someone else? Brother, didn't you say you were done with me? So what I do has nothing to do with you, right? Ethan's knuckles turned white, his voice deepening. Who said I was done with you? You were. Rosalie's voice was choked with tears. You avoid me all the time, you won't even see me, brother. You used to be so good to me. Why did everything suddenly change? Hearing this, Ethan's throat moved, his voice tinged with suppressed emotion. That's because... Casha stood nearby, her heart feeling as if it were being violently squeezed. She knew he couldn't say it. How could he? Could he say that he, Ethan Sterling, was in love with her, and that was why he was avoiding her? Could he say that the moment he saw her, he would completely lose control? Could he say that he loved her so much that he had abstained from sleeping with his wife of 2 years, instead commissioning a custom made doll in her exact likeness to appease his longing? Casha laughed at herself and turned to leave, but then she heard Rosalie cry out, Brother, can we go back to how things were before? I want my old brother back, the one who only had eyes for me. Ethan's voice was low and hoarse. I'm married now. I can't revolve my life around you anymore. Does that mean if your wife disappears, we can go back to how we were? Rosalie suddenly looked up, a crazed look in her eyes. Just as Casha picked up her bag to leave, she saw Rosalie grab a wine bottle from a table and stride quickly toward her. Bang! The bottle smashed hard against her head. The sound of shattering glass exploded in her ears as a warm liquid trickled down from her temple. Casha, Chloe's scream rang in her ears. She staggered back, only to see Rosalie raise a second bottle. Go to hell. The second blow was even harder. This time, Casha lost consciousness completely, collapsing in a pool of blood, the last thing she heard being a cacophony of screams. Chapter 3, Casha was woken by the pain. The smell of disinfectant filled her nostrils, and the bright white light above stung her eyes. She instinctively tried to raise a hand to shield them, but tugged on the IV needle in her hand, hissing in pain. You're finally awake. The nurse, who was changing her dressing, breathed a sigh of relief. Who hates you this much? 2 bottles to the head, you needed over 30 stitches. She subconsciously touched her bandaged head and asked in a hoarse voice, the person who brought me here. You mean your friend? She stayed with you all night but had a work emergency. She asked me to tell you she's hired a caregiver for you. Casha froze, so it wasn't even Ethan who brought her to the hospital. Where was he then? She reached for her phone. Just as her fingertips touched the screen, a new social media post popped up. Rosalie Sterling. My brother is still so good at cheering me up. In the accompanying video, Rosalie held out her hand, pouting. Look, I even cut my finger smashing that bottle. The camera panned to Ethan, kneeling in front of her. His long, slender fingers held a bandage, which he carefully applied to her fingertip. He then leaned down and pressed a restrained kiss to her finger, his voice low and husky. There, all better now. Casha stared at the screen, the wound on her head suddenly feeling as if it had been ripped open and doused in alcohol. The pain was so intense her fingertips went numb. She took a deep breath and dialed 911. Hello, I'd like to report a crime. That evening, Ethan pushed open the door to her hospital room. He was dressed in a black trench coat, his features cold, but his eyes held a suppressed anger. You're the one who called the police, accusing Rosie of assault? Yes, Casha said, looking him straight in the eye. Intentional injury is enough to press charges. Ethan's voice was low, his brow furrowed. It was wrong of her to hit you in a fit of anger, but I've already punished her. The matter is closed. Punished? Casha scoffed. How did you punish her? She has a wild streak. I've grounded her for a day. She's not allowed to leave the house. Casha was stunned for a moment, then burst out laughing, the laughter making her wounds throb. I have over 30 stitches, and you ground her for 1 day. Ethan, are you grounding her to punish her, or are you just trying to protect her from me finding her and causing trouble? Ethan's eyes darkened. What nonsense are you talking about? Of course it's a punishment. I've had the case withdrawn, and don't bother trying to report it at another precinct. No one in the entire city of Northwood will take this case. Casha clutched the bedsheets so tightly her nails nearly dug into her palms. There were a million things she wanted to say, but in the end, she could only force out one question. Ethan, in the 6 years I've chased after you, what have you seen me as? If you don't care about me, why did you marry me? Ethan's brow furrowed even deeper. Who said I don't care about you? After a pause, he continued, all right, this ends here. I'll stay at the hospital to take care of you for the next few days, and I'll compensate you after you're discharged. Stop making a scene. He said it as if he were bestowing upon her some great heavenly gift. Casha suddenly found it laughable. Yes, it had always been her chasing him, telling him she liked him, begging to be with him, demanding to sleep with him. When had he ever taken the initiative? For him to offer to stay now, how was that not the greatest gift of all? Chapter 4. For the next few days, Ethan did indeed stay at the hospital to care for her. He showed up on time every day, bringing her bland porridge, changing her dressings, and even silently holding her hand when she woke up in pain in the middle of the night. The old Casha would have been ecstatic, but now, her heart was a desolate wasteland. It turned out that you could love someone for 6 years, but it only took a single moment to let them go. On the day she was discharged, as she walked to the parking lot, she saw Rosalie sitting in Ethan's car. When Rosalie saw her, she shot her a glare, her face full of displeasure. Ethan frowned. Rosie, have you forgotten what I told you? Only then did Rosalie bite her lip, her eyes welling up as she reluctantly spoke. Sister-in-law, I'm sorry, I was too impulsive that day. Ever since my brother married you, he hasn't been willing to see me for years. He put all his attention on you, so that's why I was angry. It won't happen again. Ethan turned to Casha, his tone calm. Rosie wants to come stay with us for a few days. From now on, you two should try to get along. On the way back, Ethan and Rosalie sat in the front. Casha leaned against the window, silently watching the scenery fly by. But in her peripheral vision, she could still see Ethan's profile. He was always so cool and composed, but right now, his gaze kept drifting to Rosalie. Rosalie was looking at her phone and suddenly giggled. Brother, look, isn't this guy handsome? He just added me on social media. Ethan's fingers tightened on the steering wheel, his voice turning cold. Delete him. Why? Rosalie pouted. I'm in my 20s, can't I date? I said delete him, he repeated, his tone leaving no room for argument. Rosalie pouted but obediently deleted the contact, muttering under her breath, Brother, you're stricter than any boyfriend? Ethan didn't say anything, but Casha saw his jaw tighten. He was jealous. When they got home, Casha didn't even eat dinner before going straight to her room. She could hear the clatter of cutlery from outside, Rosalie's giggles, and the romantic background music of a movie. It was a domestic warmth she had never experienced in her 2 years of marriage to Ethan. She buried herself under the covers, her heart feeling as sour as if it were soaking in lemon juice. She didn't know how much time had passed before the sounds outside gradually faded. Casha was thirsty and got up to get a glass of water. But as soon as she opened her door, she froze. Moonlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Ethan was kneeling by the sofa, quietly gazing at the sleeping Rosalie. He, who was always as untouchable as a god, was now gazing at his own goddess. Rosalie stirred, sleepily wrapping her arms around his neck, her voice soft and sweet. Brother, don't leave me. You're the only one who cares about me. She unconsciously pulled his neck down. Their lips met by accident. Ethan's pupils constricted, his breathing suddenly becoming ragged. The next second, as if the last string of his control had finally snapped, he leaned down and kissed her fiercely. Chapter 5. The moonlight was like water, pooling on the living room floor. Casha stood behind the door, peering through the crack. She saw Ethan leaning over Rosalie, kissing her, his breath ragged, his long fingers gripping her waist as if to pour out 6 years of restraint. Rosie, Rosie, he called her name in a low, hoarse voice, a tenderness in his tone that Casha had never heard before. After what felt like an eternity, Ethan seemed to jerk awake, gently wiping the moisture from the corner of Rosalie's lips with his thumb. He put his prayer beads back on, once again becoming the detached, otherworldly Buddha. Casha's fingernails dug deep into her palms, the pain barely enough to keep her lucid. She spun around, silently closing the door and burying herself under the covers. Outside, the sound of footsteps faded away. She knew Ethan had gone to the meditation room again. She closed her eyes, but memories of all her attempts to seduce him over the years flooded her mind. She had worn a sexy nightgown and accidentally fallen while he was chanting, only to be caught steadily by a sutra book. She had deliberately brought him a towel while he was bathing, but he had wrapped it securely around his waist before opening the door. She had pretended to be drunk and fallen against him, only to be pushed away with a single finger against her forehead. He had remained unmoved, as if all her efforts were in vain. But it turned out that for someone who was truly in love, even a single word could make them lose control and fall into ruin. Tears streamed down her face, but she quickly wiped them away. It didn't matter. It wasn't as if she, Casha Faulkner, had no one else. From now on, he could love his adoptive sister, and she would find her own happiness. When she woke up the next day, Ethan and Rosalie were already having breakfast. Rosalie touched her lips and mumbled, "Brother, are there mosquitoes in your house? Why are my lips swollen when I woke up?" Ethan's movements paused, his voice low. "I'll have the maid bring you some ointment later." Casha accepted the gift box and opened it to find an antique worth over $100 million. She curled her lip, her voice tinged with sarcasm. "You're certainly willing to spend a fortune." Rosalie leaned over to look, her tone sour. "Brother, so you're usually this good to sister-in-law? I thought you were an old-fashioned stick in the mud who only knew how to pray and not how to dote on his wife." Casha looked up at Ethan, only to find his gaze slightly averted. He didn't seem to plan on explaining that this gift was actually compensation for Rosalie smashing her head open. In reality, he never cared what she liked, let alone thought about what to give her. He gave a faint and stood up. "I have things to do at the office, I'm leaving." Before he left, he glanced at Rosalie, his voice low. "Behave at home. You can go anywhere in the villa, except the meditation room." Rosalie was confused. "Why?" Ethan made up a random excuse, but Casha knew the meditation room held his most secret desires. Casha finished her breakfast and went back to her room, not wanting to be in the same space as Rosalie. But when she woke up from her nap, she found her long hair had been chopped unevenly, as if gnawed by a dog. She rushed out to see Rosalie sitting on the sofa, holding her hair and cheerfully weaving something. It was immediately clear what had happened. "You cut my hair?" Casha's voice trembled. Rosalie looked up, smiling openly. "Yes, I need to make a craft project for school. I'm planning on making a wig." She dangled the strands of hair. "Sister-in-law's hair color is the best, so dark and shiny." A chill ran down Casha's spine. Unable to hold back any longer, she rushed forward and slapped her hard across the face. Slap, Chapter 6, the crisp sound echoed through the living room. Rosalie clutched her face, her eyes suddenly turning cold and menacing. "You dare hit me? My brother has doted on me my whole life. He wouldn't even lay a finger on me." "Who do you think you are?" She called for the bodyguards. "Hold her down." The bodyguards hesitated, looking from Casha to Rosalie. Rosalie narrowed her eyes. "You work for my brother. Think about it, who is more important in his heart?" The bodyguards paused for a moment before stepping forward and restraining Casha. Casha laughed, tears streaming down her face. So everyone knew how important Rosalie was to Ethan. Only she had spent 6 years discovering this supposedly earth-shattering secret. Before she could react, Rosalie raised her hand, slap. The first slap landed, stinging fiercely. Then came the second, the third. Casha struggled desperately, her voice hoarse. "Rosalie, aren't you afraid your brother will deal with you when he gets back?" Rosalie laughed wildly. "He's cleaned up every mess I've ever made, and that includes hitting his wife." She leaned in, whispering in Casha's ear, "Remember, Casha, I am his one and only." With that, she delivered one slap after another to Casha's face. Casha fought with all her might, but the bodyguard's hands were like iron clamps, holding her fast. Slap, slap, slap. The slaps rained down on her like a storm. Casha's consciousness began to fade, her cheeks burning as if pierced by 1,000 needles. Her vision blurred with tears, but she could still see Rosalie's twisted expression of glee. "How many was that?" Rosalie asked a bodyguard. 99, he replied. "Let's make it an even number," Rosalie said with a smile. The final slap landed heavily. Casha spat out a mouthful of blood, her vision went black, and she fainted. In her haze, she heard the front door being thrown open and someone shouting, "What are you doing?" When she woke up again, Casha was lying in her bedroom. Ethan sat by the bed, his expression calm. "I know what happened today." Casha's throat was dry, her voice hoarse. "And Rosie has been spoiled since she was a child," he said flatly. "I've already punished her. Don't take it to heart." Casha stared at him. "How did you punish her?" Ethan was silent for a moment before pulling a lock of hair from his pocket. "She cut your hair, so she has cut a lock of her own as an apology." Casha found it utterly absurd. "What about the 100 slaps? Did you slap her once and call it even?" Ethan's voice remained calm. "Her hand is swollen from hitting you. That is punishment enough." Casha was stunned. Then she started to laugh, laughing so hard that tears streamed down her face. She asked herself, "Ethan, how could I have ever fallen in love with you?" Just as Ethan was about to speak, Casha grabbed the vase from the bedside table and smashed it on the floor. "Get out," she screamed, her eyes red. Ethan stood up, his voice still calm. "I know you're angry, but the doctor said you need to rest. Calm down." With that, he turned and left. The moment the door closed, Casha could no longer hold back and broke down, sobbing uncontrollably. Chapter 7. For the next few days, Ethan, breaking character, stayed home. Seemingly aware of Casha's foul mood, he made the rare move of having Rosalie apologize to her. Rosalie stood before Casha, her tone perfunctory. "Sister-in-law, I'm sorry. I was too impulsive that day." Casha gave her a cold glance, not even bothering to reply. She turned, walked into her room, and slammed the door shut. Rosalie flinched and immediately threw herself into Ethan's arms, her voice trembling. "Brother, she's not going to hit me, is she?" Ethan patted her back soothingly. "I'm here. No one will bully you." Just as he spoke, a clattering sound of things being rummaged through came from the room. Ethan frowned. He was about to knock when the door was yanked open. Casha emerged, carrying a large box. She walked past him without a glance, heading straight for the living room trash can, and dumped the entire contents inside with a loud clatter. Ethan's pupils contracted. The box contained everything she had carefully collected over the years that was related to him. A note he had casually written, a glass he had drunk from, the only gift he had ever given her, a Buddhist prayer bracelet that she had relentlessly begged for. Now, she had thrown it all away like garbage. "What is the meaning of this?" he asked, his voice cold. Casha dusted off her hands, her tone flat. "No meaning, I don't want it anymore. Your things, and you as a person, Casha Faulkner, want none of it anymore." With that, she turned and left, not sparing him another look. Rosalie, who had watched Ethan's face darken, felt a pang of jealousy and deliberately said, "Brother, shouldn't you go in and comfort sister-in-law?" Ethan was silent for a long moment before finally saying, "No need. She'll get over it herself. She'll pick all that stuff back up soon enough." Just like she had for the past 6 years, relentlessly chasing and loving him. On the other side of the wall, Casha stood in her room and almost laughed out loud at his words. "Wrong. Ethan, this time you are completely wrong." That evening, Ethan wanted to take Casha and Rosalie to a charity gala. Casha refused to go, but Ethan said coolly, "Your best friend will be there. You've been cooped up at home for so long, don't you want to go out and see her?" Casha was silent for a moment, but eventually changed her clothes. The recent events had been too suffocating. She needed to go out and have a drink with someone. Throughout the car ride, she didn't speak a word to Ethan or Rosalie, keeping her eyes closed and resting. Until halfway there, a sudden loud bang, crash, blinding headlights shot towards them. Casha only had time to see a car losing control and heading straight for them before the world spun violently. When she woke up again, the cold, metallic smell of rust filled her nose. Casha struggled to open her eyes and found herself and Rosalie tied to chairs in an abandoned warehouse, their hands bound behind them, bombs strapped to their chests. She vaguely remembered that the people who got out of the other car before she passed out belonged to the Pei family, a sworn enemy of the Sterling Corporation. Had he kidnapped her and Rosalie for revenge against the Sterlings? Rosalie was crying and screaming beside her, her voice shrill and piercing. "Is anybody there? Help save me, I don't want to die." Seeing that the bomb had only a few minutes left, Casha forced herself to calm down and began to work on the device strapped to her. Rosalie's crying gave her a headache. "What are you crying for?" she said coldly. If you don't want to die, start defusing your bomb. Rosalie cried even harder. Why are you yelling at me? I don't know how, brother, where are you? I'm so scared, brother. Just as she finished speaking, the warehouse door was kicked open. Ethan rushed in. Chapter 8, his usually immaculate suit was covered in dust, a cut on his temple bled, and his breathing was ragged. His eyes locked onto them, constricting in an instant. This was the first time Casha had ever seen this man, as cool and composed as a Buddha, look so disheveled. He must have realized they were missing right after the crash and immediately sent people to track them down, finding them as quickly as possible. With only a minute left before the bombs detonated, there was only time to save one person. Without a moment's hesitation, Ethan chose Rosalie. He worked quickly on Rosalie's bomb, not even looking up. Casha, wait for me to get her out. I'll be right back for you. Casha smiled, but perhaps because the love was gone, she felt no pain. After he disarmed Rosalie's bomb, only 20 seconds remained on the clock. Rosalie clung to Ethan's arm, trembling uncontrollably. Brother, let's go, it's going to explode. For the first time, Ethan pushed her away, telling her to get out first, then turned to work on Casha's bomb. But Casha grabbed his hand, pushing him away with all her might, her voice calm. Ethan, take her and go. Remember this, from today on, I don't need you anymore. My life and death have nothing to do with you. I, Casha Faulkner, am not unloved. You may not love me, but there are plenty of others who do. Ethan froze. Rosalie was sobbing hysterically. Brother, I'm scared if you don't go. I'm not going either. As the seconds ticked away, it was clear that if they didn't leave, all three of them would die there. At the critical moment, Ethan scooped Rosalie into his arms and rushed out. Casha closed her eyes, her fingers flying across the bombs, wiring she had taken a demolitions elective in college. Click, at the very last second, she successfully disconnected the detonator, but an explosion still went off nearby. As the heat wave threw her through the air, she thought she saw the hazy figure of Ethan running back towards her. Hospital. Casha opened her eyes, a searing pain shooting through her arm. Ethan was sitting by her bed. When he saw her wake up, he immediately pressed her down. Don't move, they just finished the skin graft for Rosie. What did you say? For a moment, she thought she had misheard him. Ethan was silent for a moment, a rare hint of guilt in his voice. Rosie's arm was injured in the explosion. She didn't want a scar. Your skin tone was the closest match, so they took a piece for the graft. Casha stared at him in disbelief. Ethan, did you even ask me? I will compensate you, he said soothingly. You always wanted to go on a date with me, right? After you're discharged. Who cares? She screamed, ripping out her IV needle. Blood trickled down the back of her hand. How can you be so cruel? Ethan was stunned. Rosalie Sterling is the moon and stars to you, and I'm just dirt under your feet, is that it? Casha's eyes were red, her voice trembling. You take advantage of the fact that I love you, you just take advantage of me. She couldn't go on. A tightness gripped Ethan's chest. He suddenly remembered her words in the warehouse, you may not love me, but there are plenty of others who do. Just as he was about to speak, his phone rang. His assistant's anxious voice came through. Mr. Sterling, the limited edition Princess Diana necklace that Miss Sterling has been wanting is up for auction in France tonight. Should you go? Ethan grunted in affirmation and hung up. He put his phone away and looked at Casha. I have to go abroad for a few days. I'll bring you back a gift. After a pause, he added, don't worry, I'll make good on the date. I won't break my promise. With that, he opened the door and left quickly. The moment the door closed, Casha could no longer bear it. She slowly curled into a ball, hugging herself as tears streamed from her eyes. Chapter 9, Casha stayed in the hospital for 3 days. On the day of her discharge, she received a call from the embassy her German permanent residency had been approved. It was the only good news she had heard recently. She stood at the embassy entrance, the sunlight so bright it made her want to cry. She raised a hand to shield her eyes. The wedding ring on her finger was long gone, leaving only a faint, pale mark. It was time to end it. After collecting her residency permit, she went straight to a law firm, had a divorce agreement drawn up, signed her name, and then called Rosalie. Let's meet. In the coffee shop, Rosalie stared at her warily. What do you want? I'm warning you, if my brother comes back and finds out you bullied me. Casha said nothing, simply taking the wedding ring from her bag and pushing it across the table to Rosalie. Try it on. Rosalie gave her a suspicious look, but as if compelled, reached out and slid the ring onto her own ring finger. It was a perfect fit. You, she was stunned. Casha smiled. You've always wanted to know why your brother suddenly started avoiding you, haven't you? Rosalie's fingers trembled slightly. Fine, I'll tell you the truth, Casha said, staring into her eyes, her words deliberate. He avoided you not because he married me, and not because you did anything to anger him. It was because he's in love with you. In his meditation room, there's a life-sized doll that looks exactly like you. He vents all his desires on that doll, every single day. The night you stayed at our house, when you were asleep on the sofa, he secretly kissed you for 3 minutes. This ring, he had it custom made to your size. The person he wanted to marry was always you. In just a few sentences, the color drained from Rosalie's face. Shock, disbelief, shame, elation, a storm of emotions churned in her eyes. Casha looked at her and found it laughable. Ethan was afraid to tell Rosalie his feelings, afraid of losing her, so he used Buddhism to forcibly suppress his desires. But he didn't know that Rosalie loved him too. Casha stood up and took a signed divorce agreement from her bag, pushing it in front of her. When he gets back, give this to him. Tell him I wish them a long and happy life together. As she turned to leave, Rosalie finally snapped out of her daze and called out, Casha, where are you going? Casha didn't look back. I'm divorced. Naturally, I'm going to live my own life as Casha Faulkner. From now on, your business with your brother has nothing to do with me. And Rosalie, if you ever dare to touch me again, I will repay you 100-fold. Airport. Casha dragged her suitcase. Just before boarding, her phone vibrated. She glanced down. It was a message from Ethan A. Picture with the caption, Landed, brought you a gift. She opened it. It was a plain bracelet, not even in a gift box. She smiled. She knew it was just a freebie. He had gone abroad this time to bid on that Princess Diana necklace for Rosalie. She was just an afterthought. But she wasn't sad. Because, Ethan Sterling, I don't love you anymore, so you can no longer hurt me. She took her ticket and walked quickly to the boarding gate. As she looked up, she happened to see Ethan, dressed in a black trench coat, walking out of the arrivals gate in the distant VIP channel, his expression cold. She didn't call out to him, just watched him walk away. Happy divorce, Ethan. I wish you freedom, and I wish myself liberation. The next second, without hesitation, she blocked all of his contact information, turned, and walked in the opposite direction. Chapter 10, Ethan got into the car that was waiting for him. His phone screen lit up and then went dark again. He still hadn't received a reply from Casha. The last message on the screen was the one he had sent, Landed, brought you a gift. But Casha hadn't replied. This was highly unusual. In the past, even if he had sent just a period, she would have replied instantly with a long paragraph, always ending with a cute emoji. Now, she couldn't even be bothered to give him a perfunctory response. The assistant glanced at him in the rearview mirror, hesitating to speak. Mr. Sterling, should we go see Miss Sterling first, or Mrs. Sterling? Ethan's brow twitched. Before he could answer, the assistant jumped in. Why don't we go home to see Mrs. Sterling first? He paused, his tone tentative. You've been abroad. Mrs. Sterling must miss you very much. Ethan looked up, his gaze sweeping over him coolly, a hint of displeasure in his voice. Since when did you learn to overstep your bounds? I know you love Miss Sterling, the assistant said, steeling himself. But Mrs. Sterling is your wife. She chased you for 6 years. In those 6 years, have you really not noticed how good she has been to you? Ethan's fingers paused. The assistant, deciding to go all in, continued, Do you remember? Mrs. Sterling used to love going out, going to nightclubs, drinking and dancing with her friends. But since she married you, she's never gone to those places again. She even started eating vegetarian for you, started chanting sutras, started learning to live a life of austerity. Do you know how fiery she used to be? But now, she even chooses plain colored clothes, afraid you'll think she's not dignified enough. And every time you went into seclusion in the meditation room, she would wait outside the door for hours. Once, you were in there for 3 days, and she sat outside for 3 days. She fainted and was found by a maid. But when she woke up, the first thing she asked was if you had come out, saying she missed you. Every time you went on a business trip, she would pack your luggage in advance, even folding your socks neatly. When you came back, she was always the first to rush to you, asking if you were tired or hungry. But what about you? You always just gave a faint, without even looking at her. You once casually mentioned you didn't like the smell of perfume, so she threw all of her perfumes away. Once, you had a fever, and she drove to the mountains in the middle of the night to pick herbs for you, nearly falling off a cliff. Mr. Sterling, don't you really think that Mrs. Sterling has worn herself down into someone she's not, all for you? I still remember the first time I saw her. She was wearing a red dress, drinking with people at the club. She would laugh when she lost and raise an eyebrow triumphantly when she won. She was so vibrant and bright, like a ball of fire. But now, her spark is almost completely gone. Ethan's fingers stilled. An image of his first meeting with Casha flashed in his mind at 20. She wore a red slip dress, standing under the lights of the club, her laughter uninhibited and bold. She had tilted her head at him, her eyes full of stars. So you're Ethan Sterling? I hear you grew up in a temple. Are you really without desires? Back then, she was vibrant, bright, like a burning flame, so dazzling it was impossible to look away. But what happened later? Later, she married him, retracting all her sharp edges, learning to be a quiet wife. She stopped wearing bright dresses, stopped going to noisy places, even stopped laughing loudly. She wore plain loungewear every day, sitting quietly on the sofa reading, occasionally looking up at him with a cautious hope in her eyes. Mr. Sterling? The assistant's voice pulled him back to reality. Mrs. Sterling was willing to restrain herself because she loved you so much. But if one day she figures it out, realizes she's lost herself in loving you, realizes she's too tired of loving you, maybe she'll leave. When that time comes, can you really accept it? Ethan's breath hitched. He had never considered this question. In his eyes, Casha had always been an optional presence. He married her only to suppress his desires for Rosalie, only to appear like a normal person. He had never cared about her feelings, nor had he ever thought she would leave. But now, the assistant's words were like a sharp knife, brutally dissecting his heart, forcing him to confront the question he had deliberately ignored. If Casha really left, could he accept it? If the house no longer had that figure trying to seduce him in new ways every day, no longer had that chattering voice revolving around him, no longer had that face that smiled brightly, even when he gave her the cold shoulder. He suddenly felt a surge of panic. Ethan's brow furrowed slightly. After a long pause, he said, "Is she discharged from the hospital?" The assistant's heart leaped with joy. "She should be. The hospital said she's recovering well." Ethan grunted. "Then let's go home first." The assistant breathed a sigh of relief and immediately turned the car around, heading towards the villa. Along the way, Ethan's mind was filled with images of Casha, her wearing a sexy nightgown and deliberately falling into his arms, pouting at him when he pushed her away, her sneaking into the bathroom while he showered, only to be thrown out wrapped in a towel, still giggling and saying, "I'll do it again next time." Her deliberately sitting on his lap while he was chanting sutras, being lifted off and placed aside, yet still leaning in to kiss him. These images used to annoy him, but now, the thought of never seeing them again made his heart tighten inexplicably. The car slowly entered the villa complex. Ethan pushed open the car door and strode towards his home. Chapter 11, Ethan pushed open the front door to a blast of cold, silent air. The living room was empty. There was no sign of Casha, no sight of her usual slippers, and even the blanket she loved to curl up with on the sofa was folded neatly, as if it had never been used. He frowned and went straight upstairs. There were no familiar footsteps, no cheerful pounce as she called him, "honey," not even the sound of her slamming a door in a fit of pique. The entire villa was as silent as a tomb. His frown deepened. Finally, he pushed open the bedroom door. Her side of the closet was empty. Her skincare products were gone from the vanity. The book she often read on the bedside table had been taken away. The entire room was so clean it looked as if no one had ever lived there. The assistant followed him up, asking cautiously, "Mr. Sterling, is Mrs. Sterling not home?" Ethan's expression was cold, his voice calm. "She's run away." He took out his phone and dialed Casha's number. "The number you have dialed has been switched off." He hung up, dialed again, and was met with the same cold, mechanical voice. "The number you have dialed has been switched off." He opened his messaging app and sent a text, only to receive a notification, "Message sent, but rejected by the recipient." She had blocked him. Ethan's eyes darkened. A flicker of anger rose within him, but he maintained his cool demeanor as he instructed his assistant, "She's probably run off to her friend's place again. Call Chloe Summers and tell Casha to stop throwing a tantrum and come back." The assistant hesitated. Mr. Sterling, what if she doesn't come back? Ethan scoffed. She won't not come back. His tone was certain, as if he was long accustomed to her giving in. She'll be difficult for 3 days at most. It's always been like this. She would get angry, make a scene, storm out, but in the end, she would always return with red-rimmed eyes, tugging at his sleeve and saying, Ethan, I'm really angry this time. Won't you please comfort me? Then he would offer a few perfunctory words, and she would go from tears to laughter, like a cat that had been placated, clinging to him once more. The assistant looked at him, wanting to say more but holding his tongue. A phrase popped into his mind, the one who is favored is always fearless. But what if Ethan was no longer Casha's favorite? Just as the assistant was about to call Chloe, the villa's front door was pushed open. Rosalie Sterling waltzed in on high heels, a triumphant smile on her face. Don't bother calling. She's not coming back. Ethan looked up. What do you mean? Brother, she's already divorced you. Rosalie dangled the wedding ring in her hand, her smile sweet. She gave me your wedding ring and said she's going to live her own life. She's never coming back. Ethan's breath caught in his throat, his heart feeling as if it were being squeezed by an iron fist. What did you say? Explain yourself. So Rosalie recounted the meeting Casha had arranged, telling him everything: the doll in the meditation room, the night he had secretly kissed her, and Casha's parting words. I wish you both a long and happy life together. After finishing, she threw herself into Ethan's arms, tilting her head up coquettishly. Brother, I never knew you felt this way about me. Why didn't you say so sooner? I've always liked you too. She stood on her toes and whispered in his ear, We're not related by blood anyway. Let's be together, okay? Ethan stood frozen, his mind buzzing. Casha knew. She knew he loved Rosalie, knew he had been using the shrine to vent his desires, knew he had married her only to quell his obsession with his adoptive sister. And now she was gone, completely gone. Ethan's breathing became tight. He instinctively pushed Rosalie away, his voice hoarse. Did Casha say where she was going? Rosalie's expression changed instantly. Brother, what do you mean? She shrieked, pushing him away, her eyes red. Before, when you were married to her, you were always thinking of me. Now that she's gone, you're asking about her. Weren't you indifferent to her? Her voice was shrill with emotion. Don't tell me you've fallen in love with her. Ethan's brow furrowed. Just as he was about to speak, Rosalie suddenly bolted for the second floor, threatening to jump. Rosalie, he commanded sharply. Brother, answer me right now, she screamed, standing on the edge of the railing, tears streaming down her face. Have you fallen in love with her? If you have, I'll jump right now, she feigned a lurch forward. Ethan's pupils contracted as he yelled, Rosie, stop this nonsense. Then promise me right now, promise you'll be with me or I'll jump. Ethan closed his eyes, his temples throbbing. Finally, he conceded. Fine. I'll do whatever you want. Rosalie's tears immediately turned to a smile. She flew down the stairs and threw herself into his arms. Brother, you're finally mine. Ethan held her, but felt no joy. The assistant stood to the side, asking hesitantly, Mr. Sterling, what about Mrs. Sterling, should I still try to contact her? Rosalie shot up, glaring at him viciously. Contact her for what? Didn't you hear? She was just a tool. She has nothing to do with my brother now. If you dare contact her, I'll have my brother fire you. The assistant looked at Ethan, his expression complex. Ethan closed his eyes and gestured for him to leave. The assistant sighed and walked out of the villa. He didn't dare say the last thought on his mind, Mr. Sterling. I hope you won't regret this. Chapter 12. For the next few days, Rosalie was like a piece of sticky candy, clinging to Ethan at every moment. She dragged him shopping, pointing at the most expensive bag in a window and whining that she wanted it. Ethan would swipe his card and buy it. She wanted to check in at a new, popular restaurant. Even if the wait was 2 hours, Ethan would wait with her. She had a sudden whim to go to an amusement park, so Ethan canceled his meetings to ride the carousel with her. She wanted him to be like any other boyfriend in the throes of love, to spoil her to the heavens. Ethan agreed to it all, indulging her completely. If she wanted the stars, he would pluck them for her. If she wanted the moon, he would buy her an entire observatory. But there was never any warmth in Ethan's eyes. One day, they were dining at a new restaurant for couples when Ethan stepped out to take a call. After finishing her dessert, Rosalie was about to leave when she ran into a classmate. Rosie, what a coincidence, the classmate exclaimed, her eyes darting past her. Who was that man just now? He's so handsome. Rosalie lifted her chin proudly. My brother. Your brother? The classmate covered her mouth in an exaggerated gesture. Oh my God, he's so good to you. I was secretly watching for a while. He was taking care of you the whole time. He even peeled your shrimp for you. Rosalie was floating on the praise, the smile on her face growing wider. And the way he looks at you is so gentle, almost like he's looking at a girlfriend. The classmate continued to flatter her. Are you two perhaps? Rosalie's smile suddenly froze. No, she cut in sharply, her tone stiff. What are you talking about? He's my brother, my actual brother. The classmate was taken aback and gave an awkward laugh. Oh, sorry about that. After the classmate left, Rosalie turned to see Ethan standing not far away, watching her with a faint expression. Her heart lurched. She forced a smile and ran over. Brother, are you done with your call? Ethan looked down at her. Did you happen to hear anything just now? She asked cautiously. A small smile touched Ethan's lips, though his eyes remained indulgent. Was I supposed to have heard something? Rosalie breathed a sigh of relief. Nothing, I'm full. Let's go. Ethan reached for her hand, but she instinctively pulled away, laughing nervously. Let's wait until we're in the car. There are too many people here. Ethan said nothing, withdrawing his hand and turning to walk out. Before getting into the car, he glanced back at the restaurant. Rosalie followed his gaze, confused. Brother, what are you looking at? Ethan was silent for a moment before saying flatly, nothing. He was just remembering that when this restaurant first opened, Casha had pestered him for a long time to come here. That day, he had been 2 hours late. When he arrived, she had already ordered a full table of food and had specially worn a dress he had once complimented. When she saw him, her eyes lit up, as if she had been waiting for the entire world. Brother, Rosalie's voice pulled him back to the present. Ethan tore his gaze away and got into the car. That evening, they went to the family estate for dinner. Arthur and Eleanor Sterling didn't know about the divorce yet. Seeing that Casha wasn't there, Eleanor asked casually, Where's Casha? Why didn't she come back with you? Just as Ethan was about to speak, Rosalie cut in. She had something to do, she couldn't make it today. Arthur nodded, then turned to Rosalie. Rosie, you're not a child anymore. It's time to think about marriage. I've picked out a few potential suitors for you to consider. You can look at their profiles another day. Rosalie replied obediently, Okay, I'll listen to you, Dad. Under the table, her hand secretly squeezed Ethan's, as if to reassure him. Ethan looked down, saying nothing. On the way back to the villa, Rosalie said coquettishly, Brother, what Dad said just now, I was just humoring him. Don't be angry, okay? Ethan's face was impassive. After his shower, Ethan pulled back the covers to find Rosalie lying in his bed, wearing a slip nightgown. Chapter 13, his expression turned cold. Get out, Rosalie pouted coquettishly. We're a couple now, what's wrong with sleeping together? Seeing him unmoved, her eyes reddened. If you make me leave, I'll cry. Ethan closed his eyes, finally relenting. Rosalie smiled in triumph and pulled a stack of yellowed letters and a sketchbook from under the pillow. Brother, look, these are the love letters I wrote to you as a teenager, and drawings I made of you, she exclaimed, reading one aloud. Brother smiled at me again today, I love him so much. After she finished, she hugged him tightly, nuzzling against him happily. I never thought you liked me too, brother. I'm so happy. Ethan was silent for a long time before suddenly speaking. Let's get married. Rosalie froze, looking up at him. What? Ethan repeated. Rosie, let's get married. Rosalie panicked. Isn't this too fast? If you want to be with me, you have to go through this, Ethan said calmly. I, Ethan Sterling, date openly and honestly. In a month at most, you will be removed from the Sterling family registry. Then we will announce our relationship to the public, and finally, we will get married. Rosalie's face turned pale, and she shook her head frantically. No, if I'm removed from the registry, I won't be a Sterling anymore if we go public. People will say I seduced my own brother, that it's immoral and Mom and Dad will never agree to the marriage. No, absolutely not. Ethan looked at her. So, you want me to be your secret lover? Rosalie started to cry. That's not what I mean, we can just be together in secret, hide it from everyone, and everything else can stay the same. Can we do that? Ethan said flatly, Is that why you didn't tell your classmate about us? Rosalie stiffened. You heard everything. She grabbed his hand in a panic. I didn't mean it, I was just afraid they would start rumors at school. Brother, don't be mad at me, please. I was just scared, Ethan asked. When Dad said he would find you a suitor, you agreed. Was that also because you were scared? Rosalie nodded frantically. Yes, I can just make up an excuse later. Ethan shook his head, a flicker of disappointment finally appearing in his eyes. Rosie, I love you, but I've always suppressed it. Do you know why? It wasn't because I was afraid you didn't love me back, or that you would reject me. It was because I know you are very selfish. You agreed to be with me, but beyond that, you won't give me anything I want. You love me, but you're not willing to give up your status as a sterling heiress, you're afraid of being judged, and you're afraid of disappointing our parents. So I've always held back, not wanting to ruin you. Rosalie was trembling with tears. If you knew all that, why did you agree to be with me? Ethan looked at her and said softly, because I still had a sliver of hope. I thought, if you were willing to walk this path with me, I would go through hell and high water with you. But clearly, you are not willing. He paused, then finally said, so let's just end this. Rosalie clung to Ethan's arm, her tears soaking his sleeve. Brother, I don't want to end it. I know I'm selfish. I know I'm a coward, but you love me, so please just indulge me one more time, okay? Ethan pried her fingers off one by one, his voice so calm it was almost cruel. I can indulge you in anything but this. Since you are not willing, then we will go back to being brother and sister. Rosalie's tears froze on her face. She suddenly laughed. Brother, were you waiting for this day from the moment you agreed to be with me? All these days, you took me shopping, out to eat, made me happy, was that all just playing house? The moment I did something that didn't please you, you would call it off, because you were just trying to get rid of me so you could go find Casha, right? Her voice was shrill, nearly piercing the air. You've fallen in love with her, haven't you? Ethan was silent for a moment before saying, I will indeed go find her. I will not divorce her. As for whether I love her, I don't know. He looked out the window, his voice low. I only know that I have grown accustomed to her presence. These past few days without her at home, I've felt very unaccustomed to it. Rosalie looked as if all the strength had been drained from her body. She staggered back 2 steps and suddenly laughed. As she laughed, tears fell. Brother, she's not coming back. She will, Ethan said with certainty. She loves me. As long as I go back to her, she will come back. Chapter 14. Rosalie wiped away her tears, suddenly calm. Brother, what makes you so confident? Do you have any idea how many cruel things you've done to her over the years because of me? She listed them one by one. He stood Casha up to celebrate Rosalie's birthday. He stopped taking Casha to family gatherings because Rosalie said she didn't like it. He even, after Rosalie smashed Casha's head with a bottle, merely grounded her for a day. She's not coming back, Rosalie said, nearly hysterical. She really doesn't want you anymore. Ethan remained composed. I'll have the bodyguards take you back to the main house tomorrow. Go meet the suitor our father has arranged for you. Rosalie stared at him in disbelief. You can bear to do that? Ethan looked at her, his voice soft. Isn't this what you wanted? I will grant your wish. From now on, everything will go back to how it was. I will be with Casha, and you will just be my sister. With that, he turned and left, not looking back. Sitting in his car, Ethan called his assistant. Find Casha's whereabouts. On the other end, the assistant hesitated for the first time. Mr. Sterling, since Mrs. Sterling has decided on a divorce, perhaps you should just let her be free. Ethan's eyes darkened. Have you forgotten who you work for? The assistant took a deep breath. I am your assistant, but I love Casha. Ethan gripped his phone tightly. What did you say? Mr. Sterling, more than half the men in our circle are in love with her. The assistant's voice was filled with suppressed anger. Anyone who meets her can't help but be captivated. She's beautiful, and her personality is so fiery and vibrant like a flame. Who wouldn't want to be near that? But you, what did you treat her as? A substitute. A tool. A pawn to suppress your desires? The assistant gave a bitter laugh. You can fire me. Ethan's knuckles turned white, his voice as cold as ice. Find her. If you don't, I'll have someone else do it. After hanging up, Ethan sat in the car and smoked for the entire night. Through the haze of smoke, he thought of Casha again. At 20, she wore a red dress like a burning flame, so dazzling it was impossible to look away. And later, she married him, sheathed all her brilliance, her heart and eyes filled only with him, always waiting for him to look back at her. She always remembered the tea he liked to drink, the temperature always just right. She would iron his coat on rainy days to warm it up. She even, when he was in seclusion, would quietly wait outside the meditation room until dawn. But he had never cherished any of it. So many times, after being neglected by him, she would curl up on the sofa and mutter to herself, "Ethan, when will you ever give me a second glance?" The next morning, a message came from the assistant. "Mrs. Sterling is in Germany." Ethan stared at the screen, his brow furrowed. Germany? She went to Lawrence's? Ethan stubbed out his cigarette in the car's ashtray. As the spark died on his fingertips, he called his father. "Dad, I'll choose Rosie's suitor." On the other end, Arthur Sterling was surprised, but quickly laughed. "Perfect. I have files on a dozen young men and women. Come back and take a look." Ethan grunted in agreement. After hanging up, he booked the next flight to Germany. Sterling family estate. Arthur spread a stack of photos on the coffee table, beaming. "These are all hand-picked by me. Their family background and character are all worthy of Rosie." Ethan glanced at them expressionlessly, his long fingers pulling one out from the pile, the Joe family's youngest son. "He has a gentle personality. Rosie won't be mistreated if she marries him." Arthur nodded in satisfaction. "Good choice. That boy has a great reputation in our circles." Ethan stood up. "I have other matters to attend to. I'm leaving." "Wait," Arthur called out suddenly. "What about Casha? I haven't seen her for dinner in a long time." Chapter 15. Ethan's steps faltered, his voice deepening. "She's abroad. I'm going to pick her up now." "Remember to bring her for dinner when you get back," Arthur said with a smile. "That child is so thoughtful. Last time I was troubled by some small things, she went to an auction to find me an antique tea set to cheer me up. Your mother has insomnia, and she accompanies her to acupuncture every week." Ethan was stunned. He never knew Casha had done all this. As he reached the door, a bodyguard was bringing Rosalie in. Her eyes were red and swollen, as if she had cried all night. The moment she saw Ethan, she lunged forward and grabbed his arm. "Brother, please don't go, okay?" Her voice trembled. "Let's just pretend yesterday never happened. Let's not end it, please." Ethan looked down at her, his tone calm. "Then let's go and announce our relationship to our parents right now." Rosalie's fingers tightened abruptly, then slowly loosened. She bit her lip, hesitating once more. Ethan gently pushed her hand away. "Rosie, I've spoiled you enough, but I can't love you to the point of having no self-respect. I've already chosen your suitor. From now on, we are only brother and sister." His voice was soft but left no room for argument. "When I bring Casha back, you are not to target her as you did before. From now on, I will no longer favor you." With that, he turned and left, his back resolute. Rosalie stood frozen, large tears splashing onto the floor. During the 12-hour flight, Ethan didn't close his eyes once. He bought gifts: Casha's favorite chocolates, her favorite perfume, all sorts of expensive jewelry, and even a new wedding ring. After landing, he immediately rented a car and drove to the address his assistant had given him, the Faulkner family's villa in Germany. The scenery outside the window blurred past. Ethan's heart pounded in his chest. He had imagined countless reunion scenarios. Perhaps she would angrily tell him to leave, or she would ask with red-rimmed eyes why it took him so long, or maybe she would throw herself into his arms like before, smiling and saying, "You finally came for me." But when the car stopped in front of the villa, all his fantasies shattered in an instant. Ethan's hand froze on the car door in the garden. Casha was kissing a young man. She was wearing that red dress he had once deemed too garish, her long hair flowing in the wind. She was on her tiptoes, her arms wrapped around the man's neck, while he held her by the waist, his head bowed in a deep, passionate kiss. The sunlight fell on them, a picture so beautiful it was blinding. Casha's face was tilted up, her eyes closed, completely lost in the kiss. It was a side of her Ethan had never seen before. Fiery, vibrant, unreserved. Just like the 20-year-old Casha he had first met. Ethan stood outside the garden, his fingers unconsciously clenching the car door handle, his knuckles turning white. He stared at the kissing couple, his throat tightening, a strange rage burning in his chest, threatening to incinerate his sanity. "Casha Faulkner." His voice was low, but carried an undeniable chill. The couple in the garden separated at the sound. The handsome man turned his head. Sunlight defined his features, deep-set eyes, and a high-bridged nose. He wore a casual black shirt, the collar slightly open, revealing a hint of his collarbone. His amber eyes held a roguish smile. Ethan? The man raised an eyebrow, his tone familiar. What are you doing here? Ethan's eyes turned glacial. Julian Croft. Lawrence Faulkner's best friend, the sole heir of the Croft family, a notorious playboy known throughout their circle for his wild, arrogant, and untamable nature. Answer my question. Ethan's voice was ice. What are you two doing? Julian let out a low laugh, his arm casually draping over Casha's shoulder. Isn't it obvious? Kissing. He paused deliberately before adding, Oh, I forgot to tell you. We're dating now. Chapter 16. Ethan's jaw tightened. Do you know that Casha is my wife? Is she? Julian feigned surprise, looking at Casha. But I heard that you and Casha are already divorced. He leaned down and kissed the top of Casha's head, his tone doting. Casha, darling, your ex-husband is here to catch you in the act. What should we do? Casha laughed lightly, her gaze sweeping over Ethan with indifference. He's just an ex. Does he have any say in the matter? A knot formed in Ethan's chest. He stepped forward and grabbed her wrist. I did not agree to the divorce. His voice was low, carrying an undeniable authority. Come home with me, I'll make up for what happened before. Casha shook his hand off, her eyes filled with scorn. Make up for it. Is that your solution for everything? Ethan, is your compensation some kind of great blessing? She scoffed. When I was in love with you, maybe I would have been ecstatic. But now, she took a step back and linked her arm with Julian's. I don't love you anymore. You should go back to your dear Rosalie. Don't bother me. Ethan's eyes darkened as he suppressed his anger. She and I are back to being brother and sister. From now on, there will be no more. What does that have to do with me? Casha cut him off. I'm with Julian now, and I'm very happy. Julian? Ethan narrowed his eyes, repeating the name slowly. Well, what a lively party. A teasing voice came from behind them. Lawrence Faulkner strolled over, carrying 2 bottles of red wine. The moment he saw Ethan, he raised an eyebrow, then his expression soured. What are you doing here? Ethan said, to take your sister back. But I've already set her up with Julian, Lawrence shrugged, his tone deliberately provocative. Ethan finally lost his temper. She's your only sister. Are you that eager to pass her around? The best way to get over a painful relationship is to start a new one, Lawrence said pointedly. You taught me that. Ethan's chest tightened, his voice softening slightly. I was wrong about what happened before. He looked at Casha, a rare plea in his voice. Come back with me. Casha smiled. Why do you insist I come back? Have you fallen in love with me? Ethan was silent for a moment. I'm not sure, but I'm not used to the house without you. Ha, Casha burst out laughing. Am I an accessory? You're not even sure if you love me, yet you're so certain I'll go back with you. She tightened her grip on Julian's arm, her tone light. Listen carefully, Ethan Sterling, I don't love you anymore. I'm with Julian and I'm happy. With that, she turned and led Julian into the house, not sparing Ethan another glance. Just as Ethan was about to follow, Lawrence blocked his path. Hey, this is my house. Ethan said coldly, Julian is your brother, am I not? So you want to stay for a few days as a brother. Is that not allowed? Lawrence smiled meaningfully. Sure. But he lowered his voice. Don't say I didn't warn you. Ethan frowned, not understanding his cryptic words. But the moment he stepped into the living room, Ethan froze on the sofa. Julian was feeding a strawberry to Casha. Here you go, sweetheart. Casha bit into it with a smile, then fed him a grape in return. They fed each other, one bite after another, until their feeding turned into a kiss. Ethan rushed over and pulled them apart. Will you two die if you don't kiss for one day? Lawrence leaned against the doorframe. They might. I forgot to tell you, they're in the honeymoon phase. Julian has even moved in. The first thing I do when I come home every day is get a face full of their public displays of affection. He patted Ethan's shoulder. I told you you'd regret it. Ethan's chest heaved. He couldn't explain his own rage. He grabbed Casha's wrist. Stop throwing a tantrum and come back with me. Casha shook him off. Ethan, was I not clear enough? The divorce is real, this relationship is real, and I am not going back with you, that's also real. Ethan could no longer contain his anger. You loved me for 6 years, you can just stop loving me. Just start a new relationship like that. Do you really think I'd believe you? Sunlight streamed through the window, stretching their confrontational shadows. Casha gently pulled her hand free, her eyes frighteningly calm. Ethan, you are always so confident, but do you know? A person's heart can die. Chapter 17. Ethan's heart seized, his throat tightening as if blocked, and for a moment he couldn't speak. Casha looked at him, her expression calm to the point of cruelty. Ethan, if my love for you was 100 points, then over these past 6 years, you've managed to deduct every single one. You loved Rosalie but deceived me into marriage. Minus 10 points. On my birthday, you were out shopping with Rosalie. Minus 10 points. I had a 102-degree fever while you were picking out a birthday gift for her. Minus 10 points. She smashed a bottle over my head, and you only grounded her for a day. Minus 20 points. She cut my hair and slapped me, and you protected her. Minus 30 points. Her every word was a knife carving into his heart. Now all 100 points are gone. There is no trace of you left in my heart. Ethan's breathing grew tight, his fingertips trembling involuntarily. I know I neglected you in the past, he said, his voice hoarse. I will change, but you shouldn't just find some random person to spite me. He reached for her. Come back with me. Casha stepped back, avoiding his hand. I'm not trying to spite you. I genuinely love Julian. I don't believe you. Ethan's eyes turned cold. Casha smiled. I'll make you believe me. With that, she took Julian's hand and went upstairs. The sound of a television soon came from the media room, interspersed with Casha's coquettish laughter. Julian, I want strawberries. This leading man is so handsome, but not as handsome as you. Hey, stop tickling me. Ethan stood downstairs, his chest feeling as if it were being crushed by an invisible hand. He suddenly remembered a few years ago when she had pleaded with him in the same way to watch TV with her. What had he said then? Don't be ridiculous, I'm busy. And now, all her playful charm, all her affection was given to another man. An emotion he had never felt before swept over him sour, stinging like 1,000 needles piercing his heart. He didn't know what it was, only that it was painful. Extremely painful. To make matters worse, Lawrence was beside him, fanning the flames. Brother, this is just the appetizer. He swirled the red wine in his glass, a meaningful smile on his face. If you can't take it, why don't you just leave? You and Casha are over. Ethan turned away with a cold face. I'm staying here until I can take her with me, Lawrence shrugged. Suit yourself. Over the next few days, Ethan was forced to witness their constant intimacy. They made no effort to hide it. As if they were deliberately putting on a show for him at the breakfast table, Julian would spread jam on Casha's toast and feed it to her. In the garden, Casha would leap onto Julian's back and he would spin her around. Even at night, Julian would have his arm around her waist, kissing her passionately at her bedroom door, and every time Lawrence appeared, he would add a few sarcastic remarks. Brother, why the long face? Didn't sleep well last night? Ethan knew he couldn't just sit back and do nothing. So, when he learned that Julian was taking Casha to an auction, he followed them. At the auction, Casha showed interest in a sapphire necklace. Ethan immediately raised his paddle, 10 million. Julian raised an eyebrow and followed suit. 20 million, 30 million, 40 million. The two went back and forth, the price soaring. In the end, Julian won the bid with an astronomical price. Casha kissed him in delight. That's too extravagant. Julian wrapped his arm around her waist, his smile indulgent. You're worth it. Your man has plenty of money. Ethan's face was grim. For every subsequent item, regardless of whether Casha liked it or not, he bid outrageous sums and won. During a break, he went into the hallway to take a call and overheard two socialites gossiping. I thought the sterling heir was an ascetic who had no interest in women. Why is he acting so crazy today? I heard he got divorced. The ex-wife is now with the young master of the Croft family. Mr. Sterling is trying to win her back. Didn't you see the look in his eyes when she kissed Julian? He looked like he wanted to burn the whole place down. Why didn't he do something sooner? He didn't cherish her then, and now he realizes he likes her. Too late, Ethan froze. Did he like Casha? He had never experienced such frantic emotions before. Jealousy, anger, unwillingness to admit defeat. But when he returned to the auction hall, Casha and Julian were gone, without even a glance at the expensive gifts he had won. Ethan was furious and drove straight back to the Faulkner villa. As he walked into the living room, he heard ambiguous sounds coming from upstairs. Julian, be gentle. Ethan's pupils contracted, the blood in his veins turning to ice. He charged up the stairs and kicked the door open. What are you doing in the room? Casha was half undressed, pressed onto the bed by Julian, their lips locked, their breathing ragged. Hearing the commotion, Julian turned to shield the girl in his arms, then looked up lazily, his blue eyes full of provocation. "Mr. Sterling, don't you knock before entering someone's room?" Ethan's eyes were bloodshot. He grabbed Julian by the collar and threw a punch. Thud. Chapter 18. The moment Ethan's fist connected with Julian's face, the air in the room seemed to freeze. His knuckles were red, his breathing ragged, his eyes churning with a violence he'd never known. Julian staggered back, wiping a smear of blood from his lip with his thumb. Before he could retaliate, Casha rushed forward and shoved Ethan hard. "Are you insane? What are you doing?" Pushed back a step, Ethan's eyes were still bloodshot. "I'm insane. Do you have any idea what you're doing?" "Is it not normal for a couple to sleep together?" Casha sneered. "This is my house. If you want to act like a madman, get out and do it somewhere else." Ethan's chest heaved. For the first time, a near painful emotion laced his voice. "What do I have to do to make you come back with me? Haven't you figured it out yet?" Casha looked him straight in the eye. "I am never going back with you. I don't love you anymore. I have a new life." "A new life?" Ethan's voice was hoarse. "With this playboy?" Casha suddenly laughed. "Playboy?" She turned, opened a drawer, and pulled out a box. "He's far more decent than you are." She opened the box. Inside was a thick stack of yellowed letters. Ethan's fingers trembled as he picked up the top one. "Casha, I saw you for the first time today, at Lawrence's birthday party. You were playing the piano in a red dress like a ball of fire. I know I shouldn't have, but I couldn't look away." Julian Croft, May 20, 2015. He read through them, one by one, his heart squeezed by an invisible hand. "Casha, I hear you've fallen for Ethan Sterling. He doesn't deserve you, but if you like him, I will help you." Julian Croft, August 15, 2016. "Casha, I saw you crying today because he stood you up for Rosalie again. I almost couldn't stop myself from beating him up." Julian Croft, November 3, 2018. The ink on the last letter was still fresh. "Casha, I heard you got divorced. Will you give me a chance? This time, let me be the one to love you." Julian Croft, December 25, 2025. Starting from 10 years ago, letter after letter, the handwriting was neat, the words gentle. "He's not a playboy," Casha said softly. "He's far more faithful than you, the man who claimed to be above women." Ethan's throat felt tight. I told you, if you don't love me, there are plenty of others who do," Casha cut him off. "When I loved you, you married me but didn't cherish me, spending your days venting your frustrations in a shrine. Now that I've moved on, what kind of madness is this?" A dull ache spread through Ethan's chest, the unfamiliar emotion threatening to drown him. He opened his mouth, but could only force out 3 words. "I'm sorry. I don't need it," Casha said, putting the box away. "I just need you to get out of my world." But Ethan stood his ground stubbornly. "I'll change. I can't leave. You have to come back with me." Suddenly, the sound of shattering glass came from the living room. Casha rushed out to see Julian bending over to pick up a spilled first aid kit. She quickly went to him. "Don't move, I'll do it." Ethan stood in the shadows of the hallway, watching Casha carefully apply medicine to Julian's wound. Her touch was gentle, her gaze focused, just like it used to be with him. A long time ago, she would have been the same, rushing to his side the moment he was hurt, bandaging his wounds with tears in her eyes. Back then, her tenderness was his alone. Now, she wouldn't even spare him a glance. A sharp pain shot through his heart, so intense he could barely breathe. Late that night, Ethan stood on the balcony, the cigarette between his fingers burned down to the filter. He called his assistant, his voice raspy. "Something is very wrong with me lately." The assistant was silent for a moment. "Mr. Sterling, what's the matter?" "Seeing her with someone else, I feel it here." He pressed a hand to his heart. "It hurts. It's like I'm about to die." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Finally, the assistant said softly, "Mr. Sterling, you've fallen in love with her. You just realized it too late." The ash fell from his cigarette, burning his fingertips. Ethan didn't even notice. Chapter 19. A knock on the door came as Ethan stood before the floor-to-ceiling window, the cigarette between his fingers long since extinguished. He opened it to find Lawrence leaning against the doorframe, a glass of amber-colored whiskey in his hand. "You hit Julian?" Lawrence raised an eyebrow, offering him the glass. Ethan didn't drink alcohol, he had always preferred tea. But right now, he needed something to numb the roiling emotions in his chest. He took the glass and downed it in one go. The burn of the liquor searing his throat was just like the suffocating feeling of watching Casha and Julian together. They were in bed. Ethan's voice was impossibly hoarse. I couldn't watch it. Casha? Lawrence suddenly laughed, but his eyes were like ice. How novel. It's been 6 years, and this is the first time I've ever heard you call my sister by her nickname. The alcohol began to take effect. Ethan steadied himself against the door frame, years of suppressed emotions suddenly bursting forth. Lawrence, I think I've fallen in love with your sister. To be honest, when I came to Germany, I wasn't even sure what I felt for her. I just felt that the house couldn't be without her. But these last few days, watching her and Julian, he pressed a hand to his throbbing temple. I pushed Rosie into an arranged marriage, yet I can't accept Casha being with someone else. He looked up, his eyes bloodshot. Maybe I fell in love with her a long time ago. You were just blind and deaf. Lawrence cut him off coldly. Ethan gave a bitter smile. Yes, I was blind and deaf. I regret it. Help me. I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to her. Lawrence was silent for so long that Ethan thought he wouldn't answer. We'll see, Lawrence finally said, turning away. Get some sleep. After the door closed, Ethan lay in bed, tossing and turning. The patterns on the ceiling twisted and warped under the influence of alcohol, morphing into the entangled figures of Casha and Julian. He shot up in bed, suddenly smelling something burning. Smoke seeped in from under the door, and from outside came the sound of panicked footsteps and screams. Fire, run! The glow of the fire reddened the curtains. Ethan tried to get up, but his limbs felt weak and heavy. The drink was drugged. It was Lawrence. Why would he drug him? The realization sent a chill through him, but his mind was consumed by a single thought. Casha couldn't be in danger. He threw all his strength into breaking down the door, and a wave of heat hit him. The hallway was a sea of flames, the thick smoke making him cough violently. Through the distorted heat, he saw Casha supporting an equally weak-looking Julian towards the emergency exit. Casha, his voice was swallowed by the crackling fire, but Casha seemed to hear him. She turned her head. It was the coldest look Ethan had ever seen in his life, like she was looking at a complete stranger. She turned and continued forward, flames licking at the hem of her dress. Casha Faulkner, this time, she didn't even turn her head. Ethan tried to follow, but stumbled and fell to his knees. The wooden beam above him groaned under the strain, then came crashing down, engulfed in flames. The beam fell. He was powerless to move. In the last moment before losing consciousness, he suddenly remembered the kidnapping. When he and Rosalie were both tied up with bombs, he had chosen Rosalie without hesitation. Was the Casha of that moment feeling just as he was now, utterly devastated? I'm sorry. The flames consumed his confession. Chapter 20, the scent of antiseptic stung his nostrils. Ethan opened his eyes to a plain white ceiling. He tried to move his fingers, but every bone in his body felt like it had been broken and reset. You're awake? Lawrence sat by the bed, methodically peeling an apple, the cold light from the blade glinting in his eyes. Lucky to be alive. I'm surprised you didn't die. Ethan's throat was dry. Where's Casha? In the next room, taking care of Julian, Lawrence said with a malicious grin. I deliberately set that fire, drugged you both so you were too weak to run. And yet the first person Casha saved was Julian. The apple peel snapped and fell into the trash. You should have seen how worried she was. Stayed up all night, cried her eyes out. Every word was a blunt knife, slowly flaying Ethan's heart. He remembered Casha's cold gaze in the fire, her back as she walked away without a second thought. She really had fallen in love with someone else. The realization made it hard to breathe. Why? His voice was a raw whisper. Why would you do this? Clang, the fruit knife was stabbed viciously into the bedside table. Lawrence shot to his feet, a towering rage in his eyes. Why? So you could get a taste of what it feels like to be abandoned. Of course, he punched Ethan in the face, and blood immediately trickled from the corner of his mouth. Ethan Sterling, I want you dead. When Casha called me crying, I thought she was just throwing a fit, but I never imagined. He grabbed Ethan's collar, the veins on the back of his hand bulging. You watched as your sister smashed 2 beer bottles on her head, let your sister cut her hair and slap her 100 times, and made her watch you in that shrine with that disgusting doll every day. Lawrence's eyes were bloodshot with fury. You have a sister, and so do I. Another punch landed. Ethan's vision swam, but he didn't resist. Isn't every sister a precious jewel? Huh. Your sterling family is powerful, but the Faulkners are no pushovers. I treated you like a brother, and you treated my sister like trash." He rained down punches until doctors and nurses rushed in and pulled him off. Panting, he finally let go, adjusted his disheveled suit, and looked down at Ethan with a cold sneer. "Anything else to say?" Ethan, his mouth bleeding, slowly closed his eyes. "Nothing to say, I was wrong." His voice was soft. "If this beating can convince Casha to come back with me." In your dreams, Lawrence kicked over the IV stand. "Julian has loved her for 10 years, and you tormented her for 6. You should be grateful Julian doesn't know the full extent of it. If he knew how you treated Casha, he'd be crazier than me. He'd kill you. I'd rather she be with a dog than with you ever again. I'm perfectly happy with her being with Julian. And you can spend the rest of your life alone, having lost the one you love forever." Ethan's knuckles whitened as he gripped the bedsheet, his voice hoarse. "I won't give up." "Then you can damn well try," Lawrence sneered. He turned to leave, then paused, a vicious smile twisting his lips. "Oh, right, about that lunatic sister of yours. I've changed her suitor. A 50-year-old man. He's already gone through 3 wives," Lawrence said with a cruel laugh. "For the sake of this marriage, I even gave up the Northwood Development Project. Your parents were very pleased. After all, she's just an adopted daughter. Might as well get some use out of her." "What?" Lawrence watched with satisfaction as the color drained from Ethan's face. "The wedding was 2 days ago. Didn't she call you?" He slammed the door on his way out. Ethan lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling, and suddenly laughed. Payback. This was all payback. His phone vibrated. Rosalie's name flashed on the screen. "Brother," a heart-wrenching sob came from the other end. "Save me, I don't know why Mom and Dad suddenly went crazy. They're marrying me off to an old man. They wouldn't even let me call you. After I married him, that old pervert, he violated me all night. I just got my phone back to call you. I'm so scared. I regret it, I really regret it. Brother, I love you, it's you I love. Please don't abandon me, please save me." Ethan listened quietly, then said softly, "Rosie, I taught you that you have to pay the price for your mistakes, remember?" Chapter 21, the crying on the other end of the line stopped abruptly. Rosalie's voice trembled, sharp with disbelief. "Brother, what do you mean?" Ethan closed his eyes, his voice low and weary. "I spoiled you too much before. Since you're married now, just try to make the best of it. If you really can't bear it," he paused, "tell our parents. I don't have the energy to deal with this right now. Besides," he gave a bitter laugh, "if I did, I'm afraid Casha would be even less likely to forgive me." Rosalie's breathing became ragged, then erupted into a hysterical scream. "Have you really fallen in love with Casha Faulkner?" Ethan was silent for a moment before finally saying softly, "Yes." The word was a knife, severing Rosalie's last thread of sanity. "Impossible," Rosalie's voice was almost ear-splitting. "You love me, how could you love her?" "You're lying, you must be lying to me," she rambled incoherently, recounting their childhood memories, his indulgence of her, the ambiguous moments between them. Ethan remained silent. Until a gruff male voice came from the other end of the line. "Who said you could make a call? Haven't you had enough of a lesson in bed?" A scuffle ensued, and Rosalie's cries grew more distant. "Brother, save me please, save me." The call was disconnected. Ethan slowly lowered his phone, his knuckles white. He pressed his temples but did not call back. During his days in the hospital, Ethan often overheard the nurses chatting about Casha and Julian. That couple in room 302 is so in love. The young woman stayed by his side for 3 whole days without sleeping. Ethan listened in silence, a heavy stone pressing on his chest, making it hard to breathe. Before he was discharged, he found himself walking to room 302 as if drawn by an unseen force. The door was slightly ajar. Through the crack, he saw Casha sitting by the bed, peeling an apple. Julian, leaning against the headboard, suddenly pulled her into his arms and kissed her. Casha didn't push him away. Instead, she wrapped her arms around his neck and returned the kiss with equal passion. Ethan stood outside the door like a thief, watching the happiness that should have been his. On the day of his discharge, his wounds not yet fully healed, he stubbornly checked out at the same time as Julian. Over the past few days, he had tried every possible way to win Casha over her favorite flowers, her favorite desserts, the limited edition handbag she had once mentioned wanting. But Casha didn't even glance at them. Ethan, she finally said, her patience worn thin, how long are you going to keep this up? Go back to Northwood. Stop being an eyesore here. Ethan's throat worked. Will you really never forgive me? Casha laughed. It's not about forgiveness. You're no longer in my heart, so I don't even think about you. The words were sharper than any sword, piercing his heart through. He knew that approaching Casha directly was a lost cause. I want to talk to Julian, he said suddenly. Casha frowned. There's no need. Casha, let me handle this, Julian said, draping an arm around her shoulder with a lazy smile. Frankly, I'm also getting tired of this third wheel constantly crashing our private time. Chapter 22, in the cafe, Julian stirred his coffee leisurely. Ethan's first sentence made his movements pause. Give her back to me. I'll give you anything in exchange. Julian raised an eyebrow. Anything? Yes, Ethan's voice was hoarse. Shares in the Sterling Corporation, land in Northwood, my overseas assets. Even, he closed his eyes. I can bring Rosie back and have her apologize to Casha in person. Julian suddenly laughed. He put down his coffee cup, a flicker of mockery in his blue eyes. Ethan, do you still not get it? Casha is not a commodity. She is a person of flesh and blood who feels pain and cries. You once had all of her heart and you crushed it with your own hands. Julian stood up, looking down at him. Now it's my turn to love her. As for you, he chuckled softly, you can just live with your guilt for the rest of your life. Ethan sat there, watching Julian's retreating back, and suddenly remembered many years ago. Casha was the same, pushed away by him time and again, only to return with red-rimmed eyes. Back then, why had he never realized what a luxury it was to be loved? Ethan stayed in Germany for another full week. Every morning, he would appear at the Faulkner's gate with her favorite white roses. Every afternoon, he would wait outside Julian's company building, just to catch a glimpse of her from afar. At night, he would stand stubbornly under the plane tree outside her bedroom window until the lights went out. Until his assistant's 18th call came, Mr. Sterling, the board can't hold out any longer. If we delay the East Side project any further, we'll lose at least $5 billion. Calls from his parents followed. Ethan, when are you coming back? My heart has been acting up lately. After hanging up, Ethan stood outside the Faulkner villa, looking at the lit window on the second floor. The curtains showed the silhouettes of two people in a close embrace. He clenched his fists so tightly his nails dug into his palms. The next morning, as Casha opened the front door, she saw Ethan standing at the bottom of the steps. He had dark circles under his eyes and a layer of stubble on his chin, but his back was still straight, like a pine tree refusing to fall. I have to go back to Northwood for a bit, he said, his voice hoarse. There are matters at the company and my parents aren't well. Casha's expression was blank. Have a safe trip. I'll be back, he repeated stubbornly. As soon as I've handled everything, I'll be back immediately. Ethan, she finally looked up at him, I don't want to see you again. He seemed not to hear her. He suddenly stepped forward and pressed a velvet box into her hand. Wait for me. With that, he turned and left, his back a picture of resolute desperation. Casha opened the box. Inside was a new wedding ring, engraved with EC on the inner band, still warm from his touch. She was stunned for a moment, suddenly remembering that snowy night 6 years ago when he stood before her without a ring, having said only, "Let's get married." The rain in Northwood was heavy. As Ethan pushed open the villa door, he saw a frail figure curled up in the entryway. "Brother," Rosalie looked up, her once vibrant face now gaunt and thin, her neck covered in bruises and ligature marks on her wrists. She threw herself into his arms, sobbing hysterically. "I regret it, I really regret it. I don't want to be a Sterling anymore, I just want you." The screech of tires sounded from outside. The 50-something man ran in under an umbrella, visibly flinching when he saw Ethan. Mr. Sterling," Ethan looked down at Rosalie in his arms, then gently pushed her away. "Go back." Chapter 23. Rosalie froze. "What?" "Since you're married, make the best of it," he said calmly. Then he looked up at the old man before him. "Don't you dare hit her. You know the consequences if you do." The old man nodded repeatedly, grabbing Rosalie's wrist. "Honey, let's go home. I'll be good to you." Even if he didn't hit her, he had plenty of other ways to torment her. Besides, he was so ugly, so old, and she was in the prime of her life. She struggled like a madwoman. "Ethan Sterling, how could you do this to me? You said you would always protect me. You said I was the most important person to you. Brother, I was wrong, brother." Her hysterical screams faded into the distance. Ethan walked into his study without looking back. In the family shrine, he personally set fire to everything related to Rosalie. Photos, gifts, her childhood drawings, the flames consumed the past, ashes scattering in the air. From now on, this place would only hold traces of Casha. But as he scanned the entire house, he realized she had already taken all of her things. Not a single item was left. Ethan knelt in the center of the shrine and let out a low, humorless laugh. It didn't matter. He would get her back. His parents' heart condition was, as expected, a ruse. "Where's Casha?" His mother asked, looking towards the door. "Didn't you say you were coming back together?" Ethan was silent for a moment. "We're divorced." The living room fell silent. His father shot to his feet. "What did you say?" "I wronged her," Ethan confessed, recounting the events of the past 2 years, including the truth about Rosalie and his own belated realization. His mother's eyes reddened. That child, every time she came back, she would smile and say everything was fine. "She brewed herbal soups for me, embroidered a good luck charm for your father. She even took care of the maids herself when they were sick." His father, furious, smashed a teacup. "You worthless brat, you get yourself to Germany right now. You will get on your knees and beg her to come back if you have to." Ethan nodded. "My flight is tomorrow. But there's one more thing I need to do today." Late into the night, the study light burned bright. Ethan was hunched over his desk, his pen scratching against paper. "Casha, I looked around the house today and realized how little space I gave you over these 6 years. I'm sorry. You always said I loved tea, but the truth is, the tea you made always tasted of sunshine. You look best in a red dress, but I was afraid to look, afraid one more glance would break my vows." By dawn, an entire box of love letters was finished. He took it with him on the flight to Germany, his thumb gently caressing the faint mark on his ring finger. This time, it was his turn to pursue her. No matter how long it took. When Ethan arrived at the German villa with the box of letters, he found only an empty living room. A maid informed him that Miss Faulkner had left early. It was Mr. Croft's birthday, and a party was being held at a lakeside estate. The car sped down the highway, Ethan's hands gripping the steering wheel. The box of letters sat quietly on the passenger seat, like a late confession. The lakeside estate was ablaze with lights. As Ethan stepped into the garden, he heard a roar of cheers. He pushed through the crowd, and the scene that met his eyes made his blood run cold. "Thank you all for coming to my birthday party," Julian said, raising a glass of champagne, then suddenly dropping to one knee. "But today, I want to steal another treasure." Amidst the gasps of the crowd, he produced a blue velvet ring box. "Casha, I've wanted to do this since the first snow in Munich 10 years ago." Casha covered her mouth, tears streaming down her face. "You said you loved the sunsets on the Rhine, so I bought all the land along the river with the best views. You said you hated not being special, so for the last 10 years, you have been the only woman in my contact list. For 10 years, I watched you love someone else, hurt for someone else. Now give me a chance to heal all your wounds, please." Julian smiled, wiping away her tears. "Give me a chance to spend the rest of my life proving that being loved is not something you should have to beg for." The guests began to cheer and chant. Casha turned to look at Lawrence beside her. "Say yes," Lawrence said, smiling as he ruffled his sister's hair. "I've vetted him, he'll make you happy." Just as the diamond ring was about to be placed on Casha's finger, Ethan finally burst forward. "Wait." Chapter 24, the entire venue fell silent. He stood at the edge of the light, his suit wrinkled and stained with coffee from the flight, his usually perfect hair falling messily over his forehead. "Is Mr. Sterling trying to crash the party?" Julian narrowed his eyes. Ethan ignored him, walking straight to Casha and kneeling before her. "I know my sins are unforgivable," he said, his voice raspy beyond recognition. "But please, just look at me one more time," the guests gasped. The head of the Sterling family from Northwood, that cool and noble Buddha, was now kneeling ramrod straight. Casha took a step back. "Ethan, don't do this. I wrote 300 love letters from the day we first met through our marriage to," his throat bobbed, "to every day I loved you but was too afraid to admit it." He opened the box with trembling hands and white envelopes scattered like butterflies. But Casha was unmoved. Without even looking at them, she slowly shook her head. "It's too late, Ethan." As Julian's ring finally slid onto her finger, Ethan heard the sound of his own heart shattering. They kissed to a round of applause, while he knelt amidst a sea of love letters, like a sinner being judged. After the party, Ethan sat in his car until late at night. The lights of the Croft estate were reflected on his windshield, and he could vaguely see the silhouette of an embracing couple on a balcony. He suddenly started the car, slamming the accelerator and charging towards Julian, who had just walked out of the gate. The steering wheel almost broke in his grip. If you didn't exist, Casha would be mine. The headlights illuminated Julian's stunned face. At the last possible second, a red figure suddenly threw herself forward, spreading her arms to shield Julian. Casha! Ethan's pupils constricted. He yanked the steering wheel hard. The car slammed into an oak tree. As the airbag deployed, he saw the look of terror in Casha's eyes. How wonderful, he thought hazily. At least this time, I made the right choice. The cracks on the windshield spread like a spider web. As blood trickled down from his forehead, he felt a strange sense of release. If death could end this gnawing pain, perhaps this was the best ending. Ethan had a very long dream. In the dream, it was their wedding night. Casha wore a silk nightgown, candlelight casting flickering shadows on her collarbones. Her dark hair was splayed across her white shoulders. Her eyes filled with starlight as she looked at him with a mixture of nervousness and anticipation. But he had turned and gone to the shrine, kneeling before the Buddha, his mind filled with Rosalie's name. It turned out that on that night, Casha had cried the entire time. Her tears soaked the wedding quilt, and he had known nothing. The dream shifted endlessly. She waited for him by the bed in his shirt, eventually curling up and falling asleep. She snuck into the bathroom while he showered, only to be thrown out wrapped in a towel. She deliberately sat on his lap while he chanted, only to be lifted off with one hand. She ran after his car in the rain, falling into a puddle. Every image was a blunt knife, flaying his broken heart. I regret it, he murmured in his dream. I really regret it. On the hospital bed, Ethan began to struggle, beads of sweat forming on his forehead. A cool hand suddenly touched his brow. Ethan's eyes flew open, meeting Casha's calm gaze. Casha, he grabbed her wrist, his voice impossibly hoarse. Come back with me, let's start over, please. Casha gently pulled her hand away. Ethan, don't you see, when I loved him I was still Casha Faulkner. But when I loved you, she paused. I was no longer myself. Ethan's fingertips dug into his palm, blood seeping through the bandages. Give me one more chance. Go back to Northwood, Casha said, standing up. This is the last time I will come to see you. From now on, I truly never want to see you again. The hospital room door opened, and Julian leaned against the frame. Casha, it's time to go for the wedding dress fitting. Casha walked towards him without looking back, her silhouette resembling the young girl who had thrown herself at him with abandon on that snowy night 6 years ago. Only this time, she was throwing herself into someone else's arms. Ethan stared at their joined hands. Suddenly thinking of the incense-blackened Buddha statue in the shrine, it turned out that unobtainable love was the Buddha's punishment for him. A week later, Ethan was discharged from the hospital alone. Passing a church, he saw a red carpet strewn with roses, balloons with the golden letters CJ, and guests raising champagne glasses to toast the newlyweds. He didn't go in, just stood under a plane tree, watching the person he loved most in the world marry someone else. When the wedding march began, he suddenly remembered the time Casha had stolen a kiss from him. She had stood on her toes, her lips brushing against his like a butterfly, then ran off with a string of bell-like laughter. And now, that laughter belonged to another's bride. After returning to Northwood, Ethan went to the Monastery of Eternal Reflection. During his tonsure ceremony, the abbot asked him, "What monastic name do you wish to take, benefactor?" He knelt before the Buddha, watching the green smoke rise from the incense burner. Let it be Nyanlu. A lifetime of thinking of Casha, a lifetime of penance,